What up, nation? Welcome to another edition of the WiseTake NBA DFS Early Look CK013 here. You can find me on Twitter at CK_013. And of course, I'm from the WiseTake Nation, which you can find on all the social media platforms listed below or directly at WiseTake.com. If you're looking to take your DFS game to the next level, we are a premium DFS content provider as well as a DFS community designed to help make you a better DFS player. Day Pass is available $2.50. Don't forget to check out our main flagship show, the NBA Wise Stream, which we do 45 minutes prior to lock, up to lock, Monday through Friday for subscribers of the WiseTake Nation at WiseTake.com. Okay, if you're new to the channel, welcome. Please subscribe, hit the notifications bell so you're notified whenever we go live or put out any kind of content. We appreciate it, and we want to make sure that you don't miss out on any of the free stuff we put out. We cover a multitude of free content here. And also, if you could like the video, likes really go a long way. It really help us out, allow us to continue to do what we do, put out free content regularly. And share. Please share as much as you can. The shares go a long way, regardless of the platform, whatever your jam is, Facebook, Twitter, whatever, Instagram. Please share the show. Helps us out, allows us to continue to do what we do once again. And leave some comments, man. I like hearing back. I've been enjoying the dialogue. Been hearing back from a few of you. Try to answer as much as I can. Today was a little bit busy, but leave a comment. I'm gonna try my best to answer you, whether it's to the slate, whether it's to the show, just your thoughts in general. We want to hear from you. Okay, we got a 10-game slate, a little bit bigger than what we've seen so far this week. We're going to start things off going game by game as we always do with the Knicks and the Magic. So good spot for Vooch. Centers have completely destroyed the Knicks, and on top of that, we know the usage for Vooch has been elevated. Now, they did get Michael Carter-Williams back, but it looks like they're going to still be without Cole Anthony, who looks like he's done for until the All-Star break, getting surgery. Aaron Gordon's still out. We are expecting to have Evan Fournier, who's a game-time decision. We'll see if he plays or not. Either way, the usage right now for Vooch is massive. Now, 10-1 on DraftKings is steep, right? 9-7 on FanDuel. We're used to paying those kind of prices for Vooch, but I don't remember last time I seen Vooch at 10K, but it is a really good matchup. Just going to throw that out there. Randall's been awesome. This isn't the ideal game for me in terms of pace, right? But obviously Randall's been awesome. His minutes have been extremely reliable. I don't think Terrence Ross is going to play as much point guard, though I do think he'll continue to play now that Michael Carter-Williams is here. With no Cole Anthony, I think he's going to pick up a ton of minutes. He's continuing to play a lot of minutes. Now, the Knicks have been pretty good defensively. I'll say this. I prefer Terrence Ross on FanDuel, where he's 5'6", opposed to the 6'3" he is on DraftKings. We finally saw R.J. Barrett's minutes go back up into 30. Still not getting the amount of minutes we would have liked to have seen, but we did see it elevate a little bit. Looks like James Dean is currently questionable. We'll take note of that. Elfrid Payton's only 5K on DraftKings, and I believe he's 4.9 on FanDuel. Still too hard. It's a revenge spot, right? He started off with Orlando. It's still too hard to really justify playing him heavy. It does look like his overall usage has been higher. He's taking more shots despite playing limited minutes. I guess he's trying to get it in. But the Knicks are really loaded with wings right now and guards, and so it's hard to. And some of the guys are outplaying them. Guys like Quickly, guys like Derrick Rose. Speaking of Quickly, he's always good for tournaments. Same thing with the Rose. The second unit Knicks might be more interesting in this one. Nerlens Noel eventually got there, at least on FanDuel against Atlanta, despite starting off in foul trouble. Just the blocks and steals mean so much over there, and that's something he does. So even at 5'3", I'm good with it. I think the plan is for him to get more minutes. Only 4.7 on DraftKings. The score doesn't go as far there, but I do think we should typically expect more rebounds and all that good shit in general. But Vooch is the play from this game, and it's no secret he's expensive for a reason. Atlanta and Boston. We've got Boston's on the back end of a back-to-back. They're getting a massive bump in pace here from Atlanta. So I'm Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown I'm willing to go back to, even though they kind of disappointed me a little bit today. I'd be willing to go back against Atlanta. They are at home, right? So we don't worry about the club scene, even with COVID and all that. Capella got 36 minutes against the Knicks. That was pretty big because he hasn't been playing big minutes like that. So that was pretty big. I'm cool with getting some exposure to Capella, but I am a little worried that with that plantar fasciitis, they are kind of trying to monitor him to some degree. Kemba Walker, I don't mind. He's got upside. He's in a pace-up spot. He's okay. I guess the same situation, or I also kind of like John Collins, who has had two mediocre games and one bad game over his last three, but we know what the upside is. And he's playing a Boston team that is a little thin with the bigs. We'll see if Daniel Tice plays. He missed last time out. Gallinari for value is kind of interesting. I don't mind him. He's not really getting 30 minutes, but he's getting like 26. So where he's cheap, which is on both sides, he's fairly cheap. He's in play. I'm not a slam dunk necessarily, as we've seen. He's been a little scoring dependent, but interesting. And then keep an eye out on Tristan Thompson. Thompson did play well in his game against, right? Oh, did he play well? No, it's not that great. 27 minutes, though. He was outplayed by Robert Williams. We'll have to see what the deal is with him. They've kind of been cautious with him on back-to-backs, but he balled out. 5 steals, Mr. Robert Williams, which led to him posting up a pretty awesome score. But the Boston side looks a little bit better, right? And Trae Young's ownership's been down. I know his performance has also been down, but anytime we get Trae Young under 10K, I'm going to be interested. Next up, we've got Houston and Philly. Joel Embiid's a game-time decision after getting late scratch. I think he's probable. Yeah, okay. Embiid is probable here against Houston. Ben Simmons, I think, is overpriced. I know he's coming off of that smash burger, but I think the reason that him and Tobias balled the way they did was because Joel Embiid was out. With Joel Embiid in, Joel Embiid is the one I'm more likely to gravitate to. John Wall's matchup's a little bit tougher in this one, but the usage should still be high. We'll check the status of Victor Oladipo, but we do believe that Eric Gordon is considered doubtful, so he's going to miss once again, at least we think. It looks like Oladipo is doubtful as well, so the usage for Wall should be there. The issue, of course, is the matchup itself. Now, we do have David Nwaba, we've got Danuel House, all these same value guys that did really well last time out. However, none of them are as cheap as they were. Nwaba, on FanDuel, they didn't really move him too much. They did move him, but they didn't move him too much. On FanDuel, Seth Curry is only 4K. I realize that's because he's been bad, but the minutes have been elevated. The shot attempts are there. I could definitely get behind it. Other than that, you're taking shots on some of these value guys. I'm not that into it. Like Boogie, man. I mean, what can I say? Do I think they need Boogie on the court for this one against Embiid? Absolutely. Do I think that they'll play him more than 20 fucking minutes? Excuse my language. I don't know. I really don't. And at this point, man, I keep on recommending him and I keep on going heavy on him myself, and it's just not working out. So I would hate for this to be the spot that he went off and I didn't have any, but it's really hard for anybody to recommend Boogie at this point. It really is. Anyway, we'll keep it rolling. We've got Indiana, Minnesota. You would on paper a decent spot for Sabonis, though with Towns back, they shouldn't be as bad against. Well, actually, before I say that, this is a back-to-back for Minnesota. We should see if Towns even plays. Brogdon's price has come up on FanDuel. It's still within reach on DraftKings, but still a little higher than we prefer. Miles Turner is coming off of a good game, but TJ McConnell, we'll have to check his status. He got 42 minutes against Chicago in an overtime game. He's looked really good. I'll continue to play him at 5.6 on DraftKings. FanDuel, he's 6'2". Right, he's a little ambitious of a price, but there's a reason he's been playing really well, especially if Dougie McBuckets is out. McBuckets missed last game. He's questionable for this one. If he misses again, I think we can assume that McConnell's going to start and once again see over 30 minutes. But those are all obviously assumptions. So, again, from the Pacers, I'm good with Sabonis. I'm okay with Brogdon. It does seem like everybody's a little overpriced in this one. And as far as the Minnesota side, this is kind of a tough situation for their players. This is a better defensive team they're playing in Indiana. We talked about Karl-Anthony Towns. I mean, he would still be the main one. Malik Beasley, sure, he's been kind of keeping them in games. But there's not a ton that I'm super excited about in this particular spot. Maybe we get, it's really tough when you look at the matchups. Not a fan right now of the Minnesota side, though it is just an early look, so we'll see how we feel tomorrow. Denver and Washington, we'll have to see who's in or out. Denver was extremely thin. We know Gary Harris is out. We got Paul Millsap, who's a game-time decision. We'll check the deal with him. All we know is he sprained his ankle and he missed tonight. We'll have to see what they do. Michael Porter Jr. has been terrible. We'll talk about him in a second. Will Barton has not played for 2 straight games for a personal matter, and he's currently questionable today. We're not exactly sure what the deal is, assuming he's not with the team. But if they are that thin again, we may have to consider the value plays once again. And we're looking at, let me see, which means we're looking at our boy Frank, assuming, I keep calling him Frank. Campazano is still extremely cheap. Facundo. The rest of the guys sucked. They all kind of sucked. Not to say they couldn't do better, but they all sucked. You know who really sucked is Jermichael Green. He was god-awful. But maybe at lower ownership and and honestly, a better matchup against Washington, a fast-paced team that doesn't really play a ton of defense. Maybe we go back to JaMychal Green, assuming he's going to carry some lower ownership for us. 42 on FanDuel is really low. 47 on DraftKings, not that low. But again, this all depends on the status of Paul Millsap and Will Barton. If those guys are in, hard to take that chance. Michael Porter Jr., this is a phenomenal matchup. This should be a better matchup for him than against Boston. He got into foul trouble. Things just didn't go his way. Couldn't hit a damn shot to save his life. But unfortunately, I will be continuing to play him on FanDuel. DraftKings at 6.2. We'll see how much I actually get at those prices. But on FanDuel, I think we still got to play him. And now the highlight of all this for Denver is Jokic, who's in a fucking smash spot and had massive usage against Boston. And then, of course, Jamal Murray, who's taken way more shots and is still underpriced on FanDuel. And really DraftKings, too, when you consider the spot they're in. I think they're underpriced for the situation they are in, especially in a fast-paced matchup against Washington, where Washington is home and Denver's on a back-to-back. As far as Washington themselves go, Russell Westbrook is now 10K. Not the ideal opponent, but he's going back to posting up 50 burgers, right? He's got over 50 fantasy points in 2 out of his last 4. 2 out of his last 3, really, if you want to make it sound better. And then there's Bradley Beal. Normally, I wouldn't like this matchup for Bradley Beal, but they're missing a lot of their good defenders. Gary Harris, Paul Millsap, just in general, right? So I think we can consider Bradley Beal once again, whose minutes have looked good, usage has looked good. So this is an interesting game. The Denver side should be popular after what happened, especially Frank, if guys are out again. Curious to see where ownership goes on a much larger slate, though. Detroit and Chicago. LaVine, it looks like I would think it's a pretty good matchup for LaVine at this point. I know he's expensive, but Detroit doesn't really offer a ton of resistance. Mason Plumlee's been phenomenal. He's the second most expensive player in this game because of how good he's been. Man, he balled out for 3 out of his last 4. Then he got hurt for 2 games, and then against New Orleans came back and triple-doubled. He's been awesome. So we have to continue to play him. I mean, Chicago's terrible against centers as well. No Blake Griffin, I believe, right? I think they said they're going to shut him down. So at least for the time being. So, yeah, I think we continue to play Plumlee even at these prices, at least in tournaments. Jeremy Grant is cheap on FanDuel, a little more expensive on DraftKings, but we expect massive usage, right? I think we expect to see ridiculously high usage rates. So we are going to consider Jeremy Grant for sure, especially on FanDuel. DeLon Wright's price has come up, but DeLon Wright is getting big boy minutes. So I think the minutes he's played has been worthy of these prices. On FanDuel at 7K, again, a little ambitious, but 6K on DraftKings, I think he's earned that right. Sadiq Bey's price has come up, and he's been balling. 50 and then a 37. His price is now 5.5. He shot really well the last couple games. The rebound's a little inconsistent up and down, but his peripherals are kind of up and down. If he's not shooting well, you're really in jeopardy. So that worries me. 7 of 7 from 3, 4 of 8 from 3. What happens if he's not hitting that? That has me concerned when I look at a guy with an elevated price tag. I think he's 5.8 on FanDuel. We know, as I mentioned, he's 5.5 on DraftKings. But in game stacks, absolutely, he's one of the pieces. Wendell Carter, Thaddeus, well, I guess I should probably check and see what they've actually been doing. Thaddeus is still doing good. I would imagine Wendell Carter is going to be on somewhat of a limit. And we know Markkanen is out, so there is room for him to play. Though Patrick Williams, only 20 minutes for Wendell Carter. Though we expect Patrick Williams to soak up at least some of those minutes. Patrick Williams only 4,500 on FanDuel. I think that's still really low. I know he's been bad, but the minutes have looked good for the most part. Then you got your Garrett Temples, your Denzel Valentines, the guys that aren't as easy to project or predict, right? Another guy I think that's worth considering is probably Josh Jackson. Let's see what he's been doing. 5.7. Right? We've paid these prices for him more regularly, right? He's 6.3 on DraftKings. Again, didn't get the minutes against New Orleans, but before that, we saw him do it. We know we'll Blake out. There's an opening for it. So I think we can consider him. Kobe White, 6K on FanDuel. He's been kind of putting it together, though. He did play 43 minutes against Indiana to get that 36. Not exactly, you like a little bit more than that if you're going to play that many minutes. But not the best game, but definitely a couple players to take away. Jeremy Grant and Mason Plumlee specifically, at least for the tournament world. We'll move on to the next game, which is Portland and New Orleans, back-to-back for both teams here. Obviously, Dame is a cash game play, especially on FanDuel where he's under 10K. DraftKings did raise him to 10.3. I like this spot for Brandon Ingram. There's only one Robert Covington, right? I'm sure Derrick Jones Jr. is going to get one. Covington will get one. It'll be an interesting matchup. But Zion and Ingram certainly in play. It's a really good matchup for Cantor. We know Giles has been out, so I'm curious to see. I have to look back and see what they decided to do when Cantor was off the court. But New Orleans is not good against. They've been getting thrashed by centers. Even with Steven Adams there, they've been getting thrashed by centers. Lonzo Ball's in play for tournaments. Actually, how much has Willie Hernan-Gomez been playing? I mean, he's been playing enough to where I think we can at least consider him. We can at least like in your MME team sprinkle a little bit of action. Steven Adams only 5'1", playing his boy, they're buddies, right? Cantor's the narrative. Cantor and Adams supposedly really good buddies from their days at OKC, going at it. I think Adams is in play at 5'1" for sure against Cantor. Got an issue with that, but they're both in play. And then, like I said, Lonzo Ball, we can add into the mix. Eric Bledsoe continues to be cheap, but he's also shown us a really low floor, so just a little nervous about that one. But not the best. New Orleans is not the same team they were last year. Not nearly as fast. Just a little bit different. OKC and Memphis. Is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander off the injury report? Questionable? We'll take questionable. We'll assume he's questionable. FanDuel doesn't have the tag on him, so it threw me off. But we'll check the status of him. I'm not really sure why OKC won't start Hamidou Diallo. In my opinion, he's like their next best player. The price has come down. If for any reason they decided to start him, I'd be more than willing to load up on him. Even at 6'6" on DraftKings, I'd have no problem with that. But until they do, it's really hard to justify. It's a great spot for Joval. Price is even friendlier on DraftKings at 7-3. I don't mind John Morant. The usage has not been an issue for him. It's just been kind of putting things together. But the usage itself has not been an issue. We did see, Maladon come back, which could throw into a wrench into what we have with OKC. So, again, there's not really a ton here that I love. Like, there's guys we can consider. There's even some value guys like Grayson Allen we can maybe consider if everybody stays out. But there's really nothing here that I'm super excited about. I guess Dylan Brooks is a guy we can add to that list. He's cheap on both sides. But very scoring dependent. Something to keep in mind. Miami Golden State. Not the greatest games here, right? We talked about Atlanta Boston. I guess Houston Philly you would want to add, but Denver Washington, like not a ton of great games. Miami and Golden State. Jimmy Butler's price is finally where it probably should be. I mean, the dude's been going for like 50 burgers every single day. He went for 60 in his last, so he's expensive, but he's kind of earned that. Really good spot for Bam Adebayo against a team that doesn't have a center, right? They got Draymond playing center at the moment. So I definitely like Bam Adebayo. And on FanDuel, I always like him more because you can play him at power forward, and that ends up coming in pretty clutch. I don't mind Curry, though Miami is a fairly good defensive team. I would imagine they game plan for him a little bit. I don't know if we see buckets on him. I'm not trying to go that far. But a little nervous about that aspect. But if the game stays close, you're doing game stacks, you include Curry. But Bam right now is probably the standout to me. I'm okay with Draymond. Kelly Oubre has been phenomenal, I have to admit. He's been really good. I mean, even against Cleveland, the game was a blowout. He only got 25 minutes. Still went for 27. Had he played the 30 he normally does, he was on pace to continue to do what he's been doing, which is smashing. Tyler Hero at 6'1". Could definitely get a piece of. Went for 43 against the Clippers. Played 40 minutes. If he's hitting his shot, which they may need if Golden State is on, Tyler Hero is somebody that I'd want to play in those type builds, assuming they would want him on the court. Kelly Olynyk's kind of interesting. 49 on DraftKings is not exactly cheap. Only got 14 minutes against the Clippers. That was strange. But before that, he was playing pretty well. Kendrick Nunn only got 21 minutes against the Clippers. Before that, he was getting big minutes. So I think he's someone we can't consider. But again, just more of the same. Like, not a ton that stands out. Like, gotta have it. But definitely some that I don't mind getting exposure to. Last game here, we've got Utah and the Clippers. So this is interesting. Utah has been just really fucking good. They're playing the Clippers. If this game was in Utah, I'd be a little nervous about the blowout, especially assuming Kawhi's out. Now, Kawhi's questionable. He could return at this point. So it is an assumption that he's out. We don't know. He's still questionable, so we'll have to see what happens with him. But the game's in the Clippers in LA, so I think that the blowout is not as likely. If anything, maybe the other way around. I'm concerned about Utah on the road. They have been really good. I know a lot of people talking about that they look like the best team in the league, and they've been great. Their record speaks for itself. But Just saying. Conley's questionable. That's kind of a big deal. If Conley is out, then I think we continue to play Jordan Clarkson, at least to some degree. FanDuel finally raised the price of Joe Ingles, who's now $5,700. He has played well. But it's a boost for everybody. Marcus Morris had a pretty big game. If Kawhi Leonard is out, Serge Ibaka's only 5.2 on FanDuel. How much is he on draft? 5.2 on DraftKings. I'd be down to get some of that. I know that it could end up being a Zubac spot. It's possible because of the size thing with Gobert. Speaking of Gobert, this is a really good spot for Gobert, but I thought last time against the Sixers with Mike Scott starting, it was a good start for Gobert. He actually got up to a terribly slow start, so that's a little concerning. Lou Williams, if Kawhi Leonard is out, I'm cool with, once again, 6.7 on FanDuel does not scare me. 6.9 on DraftKings does not scare me if he's in that type of role, especially at home, and I'm okay with Donnie Mitch. Kawhi is interesting if he does play, because I think he would carry lower ownership. It's one of the last games going. Jimmy Buckets is close in price. He's been awesome, so it's like at a certain point you kind of feel like, why not just go with Buckets? But for the aspect of ownership, maybe his ownership comes in a little lower. Maybe he's undervalued if he's ruled in. And not to mention, that might be something where maybe we don't get the news until late, which almost guarantees you get him at low ownership. But some pretty interesting plays. I mean, Utah is not traditionally the games that we target, but this year they've been a very good team, and they're playing another very good team. So I think it could be interesting. That's going to do it, Nation. I appreciate you hanging out as we went through the 10 games. Curious to hear who your favorite plays are. Leave it in the comments. Like I said, I try to respond to as many as I can, but I love hearing back from y'all. Hit the like button on your way out. Don't forget to check us out at WiseTake.com. Again, day pass is just $2.50. You could try out NBA content for a day. For myself, the entire WiseTake Nation, as always, good luck.